take projection.
It's Friday morning, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Alabama Slam podcast. I'm your host, Corey Hanna.
What's going on, guys? It's Patrick Akers.
And we have a jam-packed episode to get through the week in wrestling. We're going to cover a little bit of WWE, Ring of Honor, and AEW all. So we may not spend as much time on some of the things as we usually do, but we've got a lot to talk about. So let's jump right in. The first thing I want to talk about was from last Friday, Ricochet and the New Day versus Imperium. Matchup that I don't think anybody really saw coming because it was just going to be a contract signing between Ricochet and Gunther. But then New Day comes out to kind of back up Ricochet, and then they're like, "Fuck it, let's have a match."
Yeah,
good stuff. Loved it.
The classic WWE. They do this all the time. Hey, let's just have a match because, the way that their show is not formatted the way that AEW is, right? So, like, AEW is taking the more realistic, this is a sports contest. WWE is just like, yeah, fuck it, get a ref down here. We got time. Like, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I've talked about how much I love Imperium and Gunther in particular. And Ricochet is, I think the Ricochet Gunther match is Friday night on SmackDown coming up this week.
Yeah.
Ricochet's incredibly talented. New Day has been one of the most over tag teams in that company for years now at this point.
They were one of the first things I latched onto when I started watching wrestling again a few years ago.
Yeah. And Friday night they had the Power Ranger outfits on, right?
And,
yeah. R.I.P.
Tribute to
JD. This was a great, fun match in the vein that WWE does them all the time. So,
speaking of fun and entertaining, the other thing that I have written down from SmackDown is Milk Truck. The Kurt Angle birthday celebration I thought was funny as shit. I loved it.
It's such a, I love when they bring these legends back and they do these throwbacks to classic segments. And Kurt Angle, they were in Pittsburgh. A legend, one of my favorite wrestlers of all time.
You had on a Kurt Angle shirt yesterday.
Yeah, probably one of my top 2, top 3. And I will say, like, if you go back and watch his matches are some of the most rewatchable wrestling matches because they have such a modern feel to them in the way that even if you go back and watch like some Stone Cold matches, outside of Bret Hart and him at WrestleMania 13, I mean, there's decent Stone Cold matches, but that wasn't his persona, right? Stone Cold was the promos and the antics and all the other stuff, right? But Angle, I mean, there's Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels matches you can go back and watch. There's Angle and Benoit matches you can go back and watch. Angle Jericho, like, he's got a litany of them. And, he's, like I said, he's one of my favorite wrestlers, and so seeing him Friday night was a fun little throwback. Shout out to Chad Gable and Otis for playing along.
Yeah, Otis was the perfect person to have in the ring for this segment.
I mean, those guys are so entertaining each and every week. And you can tell how much stock WWE has in those two guys because they're almost on damn near every single program. They're on Raw, they're on SmackDown, they're all over the place, like, whenever they debut somebody new, most of the time they get in the ring with Chad Gable. Like, that's a good spot for those two guys to be in, for the company to have that much stock into you. Gable Stevenson, the Olympic guy that they signed.
Yeah.
Don't think he has it. So I don't know why we're still trying to make him a thing. I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, I don't either. Probably the only reason, I guess, was the Olympic angle, I guess, there with Kurt Angle to bring him in.
Yeah, he was a high-profile signing that they had. Was he at WrestleMania last year? He was in one high-profile thing with, like, standing in there with the New Day, and he suplexed some guys. I don't know. I don't see it necessarily.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of abandoned trying to use him pretty quickly.
Well, the news was that he wasn't progressing in the ring the way that they had hoped. That was never my issue with him. I thought last year at WrestleMania he had no personality whatsoever. He just kind of didn't get it. Right? There are some guys that just get wrestling. Logan Paul.
Yeah.
He just gets it. He knows what it is. Gable Stevenson doesn't look like he gets what this is.
Not there.
Yeah.
So do you have anything to cover from Raw?
Yes, I have an apology to make. I told you this yesterday. I've been pretty harsh on this guy whenever we've talked about him. I will say that I think my criticisms were well warranted at the time. Now, however, he has changed his tune. Dominic Mysterio has become one of the most entertaining guys in WWE. And it's not that it came out of nowhere. It's been a slow build. You know, when we kind of talked about it a couple months ago, no personality, no charisma. Some of the promos were just god-awful. And then over time, I think maybe hanging out and being around Finn and Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley and just getting more reps, right? At the end of the day, it just comes down to reps in front of a camera. He's transformed into a charismatic figure. Number one, he's by far the most hated wrestler in WWE, and it ain't even close. I mean, he's hated by Michael Cole. He's hated by the fans to the point where he just stands on the apron, raises his hands, and everyone, no matter what arena they're in, they boo the hell out of this guy. You know, they have the awesome little segment where him and Rhea invade Rey Mysterio's home at Thanksgiving and beat the hell out of him. And then this past Monday on Monday Night Raw, he gets misted by Asuka and is flopping around and screaming, "Mommy, help me." It's entertaining stuff. And, you know, it looks like they're gearing towards WrestleMania, Dominic versus Rey Mysterio. And I bet that will probably be one of the better matches on WrestleMania coming up. I'd put my money on, because the fans are going to be 100% behind Rey and 100% against Dominic. And hearing 100,000 people boo the hell out of this dude is going to be something. And you know, he's come a long way in a short amount of time. I don't think his potential is world champion or anything like that. But he has turned himself into a little bit of must-see TV just to see what he's going to do. I find him entertaining.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch Raw in quite a while, so I just basically get my info from you. But I think pretty soon I'm going to start having some free evenings, and I'll probably start jumping back in, so I'll be a little more active in this. You know,
Monday Night Raw, you can fast forward a lot of the matches. You know, just kind of check if anybody was on Twitter was like, "Oh, this match was great," you can watch it. Most of the time, the matches are just
fine.
Yeah, they're just inconsequential, right? Nothing really happens. So you can just kind of fast forward, listen to the promos. It looks like Alexa Bliss is going to join back up with Bray Wyatt.
Yeah,
also
she's
another
teasing
thing,
that pretty hard.
And if you're watching Monday Night Raw, every time one of these little flash thing happens, all the announcers are just like, "Oh, what was that?" Guys, it's Bray Wyatt. We've had 3 months now. We know what this is. Like, the flash happens, oh, Bray's trying to talk to Alexa or Uncle Howdy or whoever the fuck, whatever has happened at this point. I don't even know where this story's going at this point. But, like, Alexa hits, she's going to challenge Bianca, and a little moth flash happens on the screen, and Alexa hooks Bianca for the Sister Abigail, and then, like, snaps back out of it and lets Bianca go, and they go to the announcers like, "Well, what was that?" "Well, she's going back." "What do you mean, what was that?" We've been watching wrestling.
At least address it. Be like, "We've seen this before," or some shit, you know, like.
So there's that. Was there anything else on Monday Night Raw? I don't think so. You know, Seth Rollins, Bobby Lashley. Oh, Bobby Lashley got fired in storyline. Quote unquote. He put his hand on another official, and Adam Pearce apparently called him. He said, "You motherfucker." They bleeped out on the broadcast. Which I like. That's a little element of realism, you know. And it's not going to air on the cable broadcast, right? So it's just there for the fans.
Right.
You know, if anybody's got a cell phone camera, well, you can put it on Twitter or whatever. So, yeah, we will see what happens with Bobby Lashley. Austin Theory is still seemingly kind of one of the head guys on as the United States champion. And Solo Sikoa is starting to do the Samoan Spike, a la Umaga, which is a nice tribute. So, also shout out Kevin Owens. He's the smartest wrestler that ever lived. Elias walked up, wanted his help, and Kevin was like, "Do you think I forgot?" Because they had the whole thing about Elias's brother Ezekiel, and he was trying to tell Kevin it was two different guys. It was the same one. Anyway, Kevin Owens just always the smartest wrestler. Never forgets. hit Elias with a stunner at the end. So
hell yeah.
Overall, yeah. I mean, you can watch a 3-hour broadcast in like 25 minutes. Just fast forward all the shit. So
That'll probably be the go-to move.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into Ring of Honor because, like I said, we still got a lot of stuff to cover. And I didn't write down every match because there were a shitload of matches. But I wrote down the ones that I thought were probably the most relevant to what we normally talk about. The first one that I wrote down was Mercedes Martinez versus Athena. Had a belt swap there. Athena picks up the win. She's the new women's champion.
Yeah, so I guess the overall theme of this Ring of Honor show, and granted, I only watched the dog collar match, and I watched it, I guess, semi-illegally, maybe. I don't know. If you watch it from somebody's cell phone, is that illegal? They put on YouTube?
I mean,
probably.
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. That's how I watched the dog collar match. Anyway, all the belts swapped except for Samoa Joe's. So this seems like it is... And then, of course, with the announcement at the end, Tony Khan, Ring of Honor, is going weekly on Honor Club. This was a restart. I think they gave the belt to Jericho to try to maybe, in a last-ditch effort, to shop this to some kind of network to get on television. Obviously, that didn't happen, and so now the belt goes back to Claudio. We get Athena now that we can build a women's division around. We got new six-man champions. We have Samoa Joe as a TV champion who is, probably the greatest Ring of Honor wrestler of all time. The pure title goes back to Wheeler Yuta, and here we go. This is the new era of Ring of Honor. From everything I've read, Athena and Mercedes had a pretty good match. And Athena is somebody that she's a veteran, so putting her at the top of that division and letting some young girls, maybe like a Sky Blue or a Velvet Sky or some of these other girls can come down to Ring of Honor and kind of feud with her. And then people that you want to sign, right, on the women that are on the independent level that you can sign and put in Ring of Honor. So it helps to have a veteran like that, a stable hand at the top of the division. So that's probably what this move was.
Yeah. And it looks like we finally got the split between Keith Lee and Swerve. I don't think there's any coming back from them as a team at this point. No,
on Wednesday night we had the promo from Swerve saying he would see Keith next week.
Yeah.
So this is what we all thought was going to happen, and so now it's going to be interesting to see how these two pair off with each other and what kind of feud they have.
I mean, yeah, it could end up being a really good story for a few months.
Yeah.
So you kind of touched on this a second ago. Yuta got the win over Garcia, and we'll circle back to that a little later. And then the Briscoes, by all accounts, just tore the fucking house down with FTR.
Listen, this match had no build whatsoever. Like, it literally, the match announcement came out of, what was it, a stocking? Is that what it was? They pulled it out of, the dog collars? This is probably worth buying the replay just to see this match. And like I said, I watched it on YouTube a day after from like a front row cell phone camera. This match was intense. It was barbaric, brutal, bloody. It is up there for, one of the best dog collar matches I've ever seen. Piper Valentine is kind of like the dog collar match that everybody references. I've never seen a dog collar match be this reckless, though, where the guys were, just going all out. There's a spot where I think it was Mark Briscoe was on the top rope, and Cash just literally pulled him off from the top down to the outside of the ring with a bunch of chairs out and just fucking that's a massive-ass bump to take. Just whipped him off. And, the classic dog collar spots, wrapping it around, choking it with people, hanging them over the rope. It had all that stuff and more. These two teams have amazing chemistry. I wish that the Briscoes could be on AEW television because I think if this match were to happen, at one of the big 4 AEW pay-per-views in front of a hot crowd, people be talking about this match like, is it one of the greatest tag team matches of all time?
Yeah, like an all-timer.
Yeah. And so FTR to have this legacy of, really taking this year and elevating themselves and elevating tag team wrestling in AEW, in New Japan, in AAA, around the world. And then the Briscoes, if you were unfamiliar with them up until this point. Now you can sign up for Honor Club for $9.99 and go watch the Briscoes, right? They've been, I don't think it's questionable. They have been like kind of the best act that's never been on a big-time television program.
Yeah, I will say I'm a little bummed that we didn't get a chance to see FTR with all the belts that they had last week, plus the AEW belt.
Well, that's a missed opportunity that goes all the way back to All Out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last one I've got written down for the night was Jericho versus Claudio, and Claudio gets the win in this one in a very unique and interesting way.
Through the big swing, the giant swing. I've never seen anybody tap out to it before. This should just be his new finisher, right?
Yeah, you just keep swinging.
He just keeps swinging, guys, till it happens. I mean, other than that, he's got the European uppercut that he sometimes hits out of like a pop-up position where he'll throw the guy off the ropes, shoot him up in the air, and hit him with that. And if you have a real athletic, high-flying guy, that can look really, really nice because the dude can go way up in the air. Just start using the giant swing. Because it was a little bit surprising Saturday because he starts swinging and like usually he just goes into the sharpshooter, right? So when the tap was happening, everybody was like, oh, holy shit. But if you start conditioning the audience, this is Claudio's finisher. Now when it starts happening, people get up and now they expect something.
Yeah.
So, Claudio is probably the right guy to kind of lead this brand new rebirth of Ring of Honor on a streaming service. I also don't think it's a bad thing that they're on a streaming service. I mean, WWE NXT was on the network for the longest before they went to USA. And you could argue that version with Sami Zayn and Finn Balor and Kevin Owens, that was the best version of NXT when it was on the network. You are widening out the Ring of Honor brand to a bigger audience. So, you start on Honor Club, and who's to say within a year, 2 years, you aren't on some kind of network.
Did they even mention Honor Club on Dynamite last night? I don't think they did.
They ran a little like, was those little snipes
gotcha.
come across the bottom?
I missed it.
Yeah. But there was no announcement that it was a weekly television going forward.
Right, gotcha.
But it's going to help AEW's product going forward, not having beholden to having to put Ring of Honor programming stuff on there because you got a pay-per-view you're trying to build.
I mean, they're clearly going to stay with it for a while because they had several Ring of Honor promos and stuff last night in terms of, we saw the Blackpool Combat Club together.
And that's the, look. Listen, you're still going to see Wheeler Yuta on AEW. You're still going to see Claudio on AEW. You're still going to see Samoa Joe. Obviously, he's the TNT champion.
Yeah.
You're going to see, guys like Brian Cage and Prince Nana and guys like that pop up every once in a while. I think what you won't see is two Ring of Honor guys having some kind of program on AEW television the way that they have been. You will see these guys be sprinkled throughout because you still want to try to promote that in some kind of way, right? So you still probably have an FTR show up in Ring of Honor. You just won't have, there won't. I wouldn't anticipate seeing Ring of Honor World Championship matches on AEW TV going forward.
Yeah. Well, let's get into Dynamite from last night. A lot of stuff to cover there. The first match, straight out of the gate, Death Triangle versus the Elite. A lot of good spots in this one. Again, we see the hammer. And then the twist at the end was Kenny was like, fuck it. Y'all don't play by the rules. We're going to not play by the rules. Let's have a no DQ match.
Yeah.
All weapons allowed. That shit could get wild next week.
So if I listen to it right, and if I caught it right, so next week is a no DQ. I believe the week after that is Falls Count Anywhere. And I believe if they have to go to 7, which it's wrestling, they're going to 7, is the ladder match.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are easy ways to differentiate the matches, right? What did you think about Nick Jackson being the one that gets the carted away from injury, come back, returning hero?
I was trying to figure out what was happening there because I was like, it's clearly a thing that they're trying to tell some sort of story. And then, he kept grabbing at his foot. And then they're like, okay, well, now he's backstage.
Yeah.
And then he comes out limping and carrying on. And I was like, I was confused as to what they were trying to do.
AEW has done this quite a bit before, right? If you'll remember at Forbidden Door, I think it was Dax. Maybe at some point Dax has gone away with an injury.
Yeah.
They've done this a handful of times. My thinking was you have Kenny Omega in that spot instead of Nick Jackson.
Yeah, because he was injured most of last year.
Because he's injured most of last year. He's the biggest star in that match. So he gets the return and gets the big pop and gets to come in and make the hot tag and beat the hell out of everybody. So I was a little surprised it was Nick Jackson. Other than that, the match, I mean, this is now, the fourth time we've seen it? Like, these dudes are just, we say every week, they're 6 of the best professional wrestlers in the world.
Yes, I mean, it's a hell of a way to start the show, for sure.
That crowd was really hot for Kenny in a way that they weren't, it didn't come across on television like they were for the Young Bucks.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of that could be that it's been a minute since Kenny's just now returned from injury, right? So there's still kind of like that newness that's there, and that, people are lucky to have him back. But
I mean, he's in top shape and top form at this point, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not out there after 2 years of just constant giving it 100%. Like, he's got a full tank.
Yeah.
And
him and Pac, I mean, in their little brief interactions, they continue to just have amazing chemistry together.
Yeah.
It was good to see Phoenix kind of go along with the hammer at this point, because that has been a thing we brought up. Like, why is he so hesitant? He used it at the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So now just to finally be like, okay, these guys are actually heels.
Yeah, we're trying to win.
Yeah, we're trying to win. It makes all the sense in the world. So good overall. I expect next week will probably be a bonkers-ass match.
Yeah. So the next thing I have written down, and I said we would circle back to this, is the fact that Garcia lost his belt. So Jericho tells Garcia that Sammy is going to be his mentor now. That's not going to go well. Clearly, right?
So there's still, because I think you're right. Yeah, because where does this lead? Like, does it lead to a Garcia-Sammy feud?
I think it leads to his split, because he's appeared to be all in with JAS since he turned back.
Right.
And I don't know. I feel like this is going to be where.
But now you're doing multiple turns with a wrestler in a very short amount of time. Like, it's getting Big Show level turns, and this dude's only been on television for a year and a half.
Yeah,
and he's already went with Danielson and went with Jericho, went back like back and forth. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I just don't see this going well.
No, and surely, I mean, you can't turn Sammy babyface. That ain't never gonna happen. No. You're gonna need a lot of rehabilitation before you do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, when they were like, Sammy's gonna be your mentor, I was like, oh shit, okay. I mean, it could be interesting, could be good television. I don't think it will be, but we'll see. I mean, hold out hope. At least Jake Hager got his catchphrase in one more time.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a nice tweet yesterday too from him. Did you see that?
I didn't see that one. No.
He was on like a massage table or some sort of. He was like in a chair sleeping or something. I don't know. And it pans up from his feet, and he's like asleep, kind of, with the hat kind of over his face. He's like, I like this hat. I like this hat.
Oh, good stuff.
Yeah. So next up, Brian Cage versus Jungle Boy Jack Perry. I kind of just thought, okay, well, he's going to beat the hell out of Jack, but I obviously wanted Jack to win, but I was like, there ain't no way they put this over, and they did it. And I thought it was a good match. He put on a good show versus a big powerhouse. Oh, I don't want to call him powerhouse Brian Cage, but a monster like Brian Cage.
Yeah. And then of course, the end with the Firm coming out. Also, the name change from Morrissey to Big Bill. Why? What was wrong? I mean, I get you want to probably have something that you can trademark as a company, right? But why not Big Bill Morrissey?
Yeah.
People got to have last names in wrestling unless you have a name like Hook. You know what I mean? Like,
Speaking of, he comes.
speaking
out
of,
to,
yeah, but like you have to have last names, or like Gunther. Even Gunther really should have a last name, but whatever. I mean, it's European. But like Big Bill is not. That's like some late 70s kind of throwback wrestling that could be left in the past. Anyway, all that being said, the Firm comes out, attacks Jack Perry, and out comes Hook. And I gotta say that I was like, oh, okay, this is an exciting little tandem. Let's see what happens here, because we know Jungle Boy can go in the ring. Hook, he's still young.
Yeah.
Really hadn't had a match over like 10 minutes. But he does have a presence about him and an aura. And so when he came out and the Firm powdered from the ring and him and Jungle Boy Jack are standing there, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that could be something.
This could be something. This could be interesting. This seems to be the Hook playbook at this point, the way they can still get him on television. He did the little thing with Danhausen for a couple months. And so, yeah, if he's not ready to go full-time on his own, and not that he should be. I mean, it takes years to get good at this stuff,
Yeah,
right? He's only been
young.
training for a year and a half. You pair him up with somebody like Jack, who's been doing it for a while and is beloved by the crowd, and that's a way to keep him fresh. So I think it's a good little tag team going forward. We'll see what happens with them.
Yeah, I think that could be something to monitor for a while. I mean, it may not lead anywhere, but
No, but
I
for
thought
a
it
few
was
months.
a nice little angle.
Yeah, for a few months you can make it happen.
So next up, House of Black squash match against the QT Marshall and his group. I think this is probably the way to do it. Just build the House of Black to like basically an indestructible force.
Right, yeah. I mean, they ain't much. I mean, they just beat the shit out of these guys.
Yeah.
Ain't much to say.
So like Buddy and Brody are doing work on the outside of the ring, and Malachi is just sitting in the corner chilling.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is badass. I love it. And then like bell rings, roundhouse kick to the face, pin, get out.
Yeah.
Loved it.
And the crowd was behind them.
Yeah, they got one of the coolest entrances. Julia Hart looked fucking badass and hit him with the mist out of the gate.
Yeah.
A little surprise there because she hasn't used the mist before, right?
Nope.
But yeah, I think that was a nice move, putting her with them, because she looks kick ass in that black and white like that. And I mean, I don't know. This is everything I wanted out of House of Black.
Their question is going to be, how long do you keep this up before it gets stale? And by that I mean specifically them beating up on lower tier tag teams.
Yeah.
And then who are the first group of people that they go against?
Yeah, that's a force.
Yeah. Because if the hints are there, they beat up Brandon Cutler. The Elite, presumably once they win the titles from Death Triangle, do you do House of Black versus the Elite? And then in that situation, who do you put over?
Yeah, that's tough.
Because
if you're establishing House of Black as a dominating force.
Right. So,
tough decision to make.
This is the tricky part with these gimmicks like House of Black, and I think you're seeing it on the other side too with WWE with the Bray Wyatt gimmick, which is just like, it's cool and it's got an element of like a little bit of a horror movie to it, and a little bit of kind of an edge. But then the problem is, okay, who do you run them up against? Because if they're indestructible, why would they not just immediately go to the top of the card, right? Well, then you don't necessarily want to do that because you're trying to build a story up along the way, and you don't want to do that to your top guys anyway. So like, and then as soon as you beat House of Black, they're not indestructible anymore, right? So like, all the stock that you've invested in beating all these people up, the first time they lose, well, now they've become vulnerable, and it kind of loses some of the mystique of it. So it's a fine line to try to walk, and AEW kind of screwed it up the first time with House of Black. So now this is a restart. Looks like the crowd is back into them again, so we'll see if maybe round 2 they do something a little bit different and can kind of make something happen with these guys.
Yeah, I think you make a valid point. I don't know how to handle that. If I were Tony Khan, I don't know what the hell I'd do, because clearly it looks like the belts are going on the Elite, but you can't turn around and you can and immediately take them off of. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you leave them on them for like 3 months and then let House of Black get them? I don't know.
But then you have to say, okay, well, what do we do with House of Black in those 3 months?
Yeah.
That's
True.
what I'm saying. Like, whenever it's these kind of gimmicks are, while they're cool, they're a little bit harder to pull off.
Yeah. Because, we've got a handful of established trios teams, but not as many to cover a 3-month period.
Yeah, and they can't do this. House of Black can't come out and beat up jobbers every week or even every other week.
Yeah.
Like, at some point, they're going to have to involve themselves with somebody that's major.
Yeah. Best friends maybe.
Could be. Yeah, it could be them.
They got involved with them last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever.
Yeah.
So next up, a little twist in the show: Jericho versus Action Andretti. Because earlier in the show, Jericho, while they were backstage, was like, "Yeah, I got to get a tune-up versus a jobber this week."
Yeah.
Probably should have seen it coming at that point. But comes out. Andretti gets a few moves in. I was like, okay, well, they're gonna give this kid a little bit of action.
Yeah.
And then it went to commercial break. I was like, oh,
yeah, he kicked out of the code breaker.
yeah,
And that crowd, shout out to that crowd Wednesday night, because they were hyped for literally everything, and it made the show so much better. We got a "Let's Go Jobber" chant, which is something I don't know if I've ever heard before.
Loved it.
And then Action Andretti kicks out of the code breaker, and they go to commercial, and Jericho's shocked face, and the fucking crowd standing up.
Yeah.
At that point, when they went to commercial break, I was like, "Oh, this kid's winning."
Yeah, when they went to break,
winning.
I was like, something's happening.
Yeah, I love this segment. I thought this whole thing was great. This is a perfect way to use Jericho. Obviously they signed Andretti afterwards. They were probably going to sign him anyway, right? Maybe it's a dude you put at Ring of Honor.
Well, I looked him up after the match, and he's been on Dark and stuff, so I just didn't know anything about him. I was like, where did this guy... I just assumed it was some local kid that was going to get put out in 2 minutes, And then once they went to the break, I was like, I got to look this kid up.
Yeah. So it's a perfect way to use Jericho. And, every once in a while you can get away with this. I guess probably the most famous version of this is 1, 2, 3 Kid versus Razor Ramon. And then if you go back to like the Ruthless Aggression era in WWE, I believe Santino Marella debuted as just like a jobber that they pulled out of the crowd, and he wrestled Umaga. And I think John Cena interfered in the match on Morella's behalf, and Santino Marella ended up beating Umaga for the Intercontinental Championship on his first night. So there's stuff like that. There's precedent for this kind of stuff. We just haven't seen it in AEW yet, and we haven't seen it with a guy of Chris Jericho's stature. Washed up Chris Jericho might be a cool little story to run with here for a little bit.
Yeah, maybe that's how you explain if something goes down between Garcia and Sammy. Garcia's being like, fuck it, why am I taking orders from your washed up ass?
Yeah.
And I gotta let this fucking guy be in charge of me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how that plays out.
And this could be a way to turn Jericho back babyface. If he's washed up and he gets some kind of sympathy from the crowd. He is a legend. So I don't know. It's something different, right? Which is nice. And that's what there was an excitement level about AEW that they've had these past 2 weeks, that it felt like early AEW.
Yeah.
Where kind of anything could happen. You didn't really know what was going on. It was surprising in the best kind of ways.
Yeah. Because Garcia could be like, fuck it, you lost your belt.
Yeah.
Why am I taking orders from you? You lost to a fucking jobber.
Yeah. And then for Action Andretti, hey, he's got something. Let's see what we can do from here.
Yeah.
You know, put him on. I don't know. Put him on Ring of Honor. Put him on Rampage or something like that. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah, because they were the crowd was for real hype
Yeah.
for him, and I loved it. Yeah, I still didn't think that they were going to let him win, but I was like, they're just going to highlight this guy. But then they fucking got the pin.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. I don't think you can tease like that and not go all the way with it. Like,
Once you commit, you got to commit.
yeah, once you commit to we're gonna make this thing competitive, I think you kind of have to be like, all right, well, we just have to go all the way and have to put this dude over. Otherwise, you just end it with a code breaker. Like you give him a bunch of offense flurry at the beginning, and then boom, he hits the code breaker, the back elbow, and it's over. But when it goes to commercial, okay, now it's going to really feel disappointing if we go all this way and Jericho just ends up beating the guy.
Yeah. So last thing on the agenda is MJF versus our man Ricky Starks, Team Ricky. I thought it started out a little slower than I wanted it to. It's still quality, but then it got real heated in those last 8 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, something felt off in the beginning. I don't know if it was maybe both competitors were just a little bit too hyped. There was some miscommunication on like a shoulder tackle that looked odd. I think they got it back though, and like you said at the end, the last 5-6 minutes of this match was
Fire.
were awesome.
Yeah.
You know, it is exciting to have a Dynamite end with two guys who have been with the company pretty much since the beginning. And to see an entire crowd be that hyped for something that doesn't involve a Jon Moxley or a Bryan Danielson or a Kenny Omega or any of these other names that we've come to know and associate with AEW. The fact that it was MJF as newly crowned champion and Ricky Starks as a new up-and-coming potential superstar was refreshing to see. And I think they delivered. I don't think the match underwhelmed. And also, these are two guys who, it's, much like The Rock back in the day, it was never about the matches with him, right? It was about the promos and all the segments leading up to that. Like the big moment in this feud between MJF and Ricky Starks happened last week.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're going to remember. And that's not a...
Yeah, my son Carter brought that up last week. He was like, I bought in last week during that promo, and he was like, because I've always kind of liked Ricky Starks, but then, he was talking about the promo, and he doesn't keep up with Twitter. Or, I mean, he does, but not wrestling Twitter. The only stories he knows about is the shit that I send him.
Yeah.
And I told him last night, I was like, yeah, so I was like, apparently Starks had a thing kind of written out, as a guideline, kind of scripted or whatever. And then when MJF gave his promo, he was like, fuck it. I'm throwing it out. Going off the top.
Yeah, and it was nice Wednesday night that we got a backstage promo from MJF first. He killed it. Absolutely killed it.
Yeah.
Ricky Starks answers a little bit later in the episode. And that was good too, because also the show has a little bit of forward momentum. Like you can tell as you're watching it, we're building up to something. I wish they would do more of that stuff for these big matches. But again, yeah, like it's for a lot of characters and a lot of gimmicks, it's not about the matches, and it's not the matches that you end up remembering, right? I mean, Ric Flair had how long career as the top of the chain? 15 years almost. How many Ric Flair matches do we remember? I mean, there's a handful of them. There's a hell of a lot of promos we remember, right?
Yeah.
No
so context, Flair.
Yeah, like it's just that's not a disservice to these two guys to just be like, oh, we're not going to remember this match, but it'll be the promo that gets remembered because it happens to all kinds of guys. And then, yeah, we will see. It kind of seems like by the end of this match, this was just going to be a one-off because MJF retreats back up the ramp and Bryan Danielson's music hits and he chases him out. Bryan Danielson stands there in the middle of the ring with Ricky Starks, holds his hands up as we go off the air. So it seems like we're going to do MJF and Danielson. We talked about couple weeks ago how we thought MJF should have came out of, the pay-per-view as a babyface.
Yeah.
But we mentioned a handful of guys that we think he could get booed against, Ricky Starks and Eddie Kingston being one of them. I'm not so sure that in the Danielson versus MJF feud that MJF might start getting some cheers again. Only because if you go back a week ago and you replace Ricky Starks with a Bryan Danielson and you put him in that promo, MJF might KO Danielson on the mic, right?
Yeah,
and
maybe.
Get some cheers.
Yeah, because, MJF got some boos last week.
Yeah, and he damn sure got booed because he was going up against Ricky Starks in Texas.
Right.
So, I don't know. Maybe this is the true test, whether MJF can be a full-blown heel or if he's going to emerge as some kind of tweener. Because the Ricky Starks thing was a layup, and when he goes up against Eddie Kingston eventually, that'll be a layup too. Like, he's going to be able to hit those guys, and those guys are going to be able to respond back in such a way that gets the crowd immediately on their side. But I don't know if Danielson is capable of that. Not that Danielson is bad on the microphone, but he is not... Danielson is not the underdog anymore the way he was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Danielson now is the certified,
established,
one of the greatest wrestlers, if not the greatest wrestler that ever lived, right? You can't play that underdog note anymore.
Coca-Cola commercials.
Yeah, like he's the guy now. He's the Patriots, he's the Yankees, he's the Celtics, the Lakers. He is the established guy. Whereas Ricky and Eddie Kingston still have that underdog flair to them. So Bryan can't play that note. So what note does he play against MJF? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it'll obviously, going up against and having something with a guy like Danielson will be very advantageous in building MJF this year.
So my thinking was coming out of...
He and Danielson could have a hell of a match, and Danielson could put him over.
Yeah. But do you insert Ricky into that mix?
I mean, they're coming back to Ricky at some point, surely.
I would just,
there's too much there. There's been too much talk, and we'll get to this in a minute. There's been too much talk about these two guys.
Right. I would just be nervous when you get Danielson and MJF in the ring that I don't know if, just to play it safe, I wouldn't insert Ricky Starks into this thing and make it a triple threat at Revolution.
I mean...
And have MJF versus Danielson versus Ricky Starks. Because Ricky still has a claim, right? MJF kicked him in the nuts. You can't beat him clean.
Yeah.
Danielson has a claim. Hey, you put down a man that was a father figure to me. Just to give you some kind of safeguard so that the crowd doesn't MJF doesn't say something clever and witty against Danielson, and Danielson, doesn't have an equally as clever and witty comeback, and the crowd starts to go back.
Yeah.
Because it can happen.
I do want to read this real quick. We did a little different this week. For the Twitter prompt of the week, I tweeted out last night, so it was a little late start. I should have done it a little earlier. But I said, do y'all have a question for us instead of us asking you questions? So my question, or the question that we got sent from Chase Gilmer was, will MJF versus Ricky Starks eventually turn into AEW's version of Austin versus The Rock? And we've seen this in a couple headlines in a couple places in the last week or two. And even MJF, they're leaning into it a little bit. MJF called Ricky the Pebble, instead of The Rock. And it's interesting they said that. Like I mentioned a little while ago that Carter doesn't read. He doesn't follow any wrestling sites on social media. He's barely on social media anyway. But he even made me pause the match last night, and he was like, "Do you think this could end up being an all-timer rivalry?" And he even mentioned The Rock, and I thought it was weird for him to pull that out of thin air like that.
Yeah, Ricky has drawn comparisons to The Rock. So the thing about The Rock and Austin feud was very much so in the beginning. It was, here are two new characters that we're going to put at the forefront, and ultimately what ended up happening was it elevated WWE into a position that it hadn't seen before and hasn't seen since, right? And it became, they weren't Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock when they first started the rivalry, right? Like, it became that, and they ended up, I think they main evented 3 WrestleManias, 3 straight years. So in terms of that situation, are MJF and Ricky Starks going to go down as, 2 of the top 5 wrestlers of all time? I don't know. I mean, MJF might have that potential. We've talked about that before. But in terms of AEW, like, could they elevate? Could this be the feud that elevates AEW into a new stratosphere? Sure. Yeah, it can do that. It has that potential. My fear wouldn't be that those 2 guys couldn't deliver. My fear would be that the creative that they're given doesn't deliver. And so in that situation, I think it comes back more to the booker and the management of those guys rather than the 2 individual guys' skill sets as professional wrestlers.
Yeah. I mean, you make a good point there. I'm sure. I don't know. This one's not dead. They'll come back to it. I think this will be one we'll see several times over the next couple of years. Hopefully. I mean,
hopefully, yeah.
One thing we didn't touch on was Hangman backstage. Not so much a promo as it was just a backstage segment with an interview. And I wonder how much of that was real life.
The best part about it is that you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And we talk, we hammer this point home all the time on this podcast, believability.
I mean, he sold the fuck out of it.
That is what you have to have. And he, that promo, just the fact that you're asking that question, like, was it real, was it not? I mean, that's the beauty. That's where you're making art at that point in the pro wrestling space, is where you can't tell where the show starts, the kayfabe of it starts, and where the reality of it starts. And that's a space that pro wrestling can only uniquely occupy. There's no other art form that occupies that kind of space. And so, yeah, Hangman gives that promo, that backstage segment, the interview. It makes you more excited to see Moxley versus Hangman. And that's good because it gives the 2 of your biggest stars something to do that doesn't require a championship belt to be in the middle of it for it to make sense. Now, is this where they were going to go had the concussion not happened? I don't know. But the concussion did happen. And so you have to, plans constantly have to be in motion. And so you change course, and this is what you're going to do now. I would anticipate this thing gets pretty bloody and pretty brutal. I would keep getting this and keep testing the boundaries with these 2 guys, because it started off the first match, whatever, it was just a wrestling match. Heyman gets concussed. Now they're brawling. Revolution is in March. I would stretch this thing out, and let's see Hangman put Moxley on the shelf for a couple weeks, or let's see Moxley put Hangman back on the shelf for a couple weeks.
Yeah,
there might be some. You might have a little juice here with Moxley as a quasi heelish figure.
I've always kind of viewed him as like chaotic neutral, right?
Yeah, but he's always been beloved by the fans.
Sure.
But if he, beats the ever-loving shit out of Hangman,
yeah,
who was, basically is, for the most part that AEW has been a company, he's been like the main character of AEW, right? There's people written essays about that, about how everything for the last kind of 2 years has kind of revolved around Hangman and his quest to the World Championship. So if you have Moxley beat the ever-loving hell out of this guy, I don't know. It would be something different for him.
I don't think we've talked about this, but they just completely abandoned the fact that he would drink beer. Like, remember people would hand him a beer ringside, and he would drink it, or he would walk out with a beer. He was drinking beer backstage.
Yeah, I think that's when they were playing up to, like, the depressed, all my friends have left me.
Yeah.
I think they're playing a new tune with him now, or trying to anyway. Yeah. He's a family man.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but there was no kind of explanation given.
Yeah.
I think it was just there for the fans to kind of fill in the blanks.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I think that's all I've got for the week. I know it's probably actually we ended up a little short this week because I think I blew through things. We had so many things to cover. I was afraid that we'd run long, and now we actually ran just a little short. But I think that's all I've got for the week, unless you've got anything else that we should touch on.
No, that's all I got. I mean, the Sasha Banks to AEW rumors are continuing to heat up.
Yeah, the rumor that she could be Saraya's tag team partner.
Yeah.
Which would be interesting.
They're in Los Angeles that week, so you got to make a splash.
Yeah. That could be interesting. You and I looked at the Ring of Honor, the Honor Card website the other day, and you were showing me some of the classic matches, like some of the thumbnails from them, and you're like, oh yeah, that was badass. That was badass. I don't know if I'll subscribe like for a full year, but I may take a month or two and subscribe and burn through a bunch of those old classics.
I mean, what you'll watch at the beginning of Ring of Honor, and we're talking about going all the way back to 2002, if you watch it through, what you will see is really the evolution of the modern American wrestling style, which has come to dominate both WWE and AEW. That a style that takes a lot of influences from 90s Japanese wrestling, from lucha libre, from British technical wrestling, and it kind of was a mishmash of all this stuff, and over time it solidified into this kind of American style, and it really was. Ring of Honor, particularly at the beginning, was incredibly influential. And somebody did this a couple of years ago, but they took a WWE card and they took a Ring of Honor card from like 2005, 2006, and just put them put them side by side. It's the same damn card, right? Because in Ring of Honor, you had Claudio, you had Danielson, you had Punk, you had Seth Rollins, you had AJ Styles, you go down the list of all these guys that ended up becoming huge names in wrestling. They, for the most part, a lot of them got their start in Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens.
Yeah,
keep going.
You showed me one of the thumbnails of, was it El Generico? Was that his name?
El Generico, yeah.
That's funny as shit.
So, and now under Tony Khan's leadership, they have a chance to continue on that legacy, and you would hope that the next 20 years are as successful as the last 20 years have been for Ring of Honor.
Yeah, one thing that I do think is kind of bullshit about the Honor Card app is that you still got to wait 3 months, which, I mean, that's the way the WWE app used to be. It was that if you paid for it, you still had to wait like 3 months to get the pay-per-views. But now you just get the premium live events built in as part of your thing, which I think is smart.
Yeah.
You're rewarding people for, most of those people it just comes with Peacock, and we pay for that shit by the year. So,
right.
I think it's a reward for those people. Granted, some people are gonna cancel, sign back up for a month. How much money are you really losing by? I don't know. I'd love to see the numbers on that. How does that balance out? Because, you could literally sign up for Honor Card for $10 and then cancel and then sign back up again in 2 months and get the next pay-per-view or whatever.
Yeah, there might be something they look towards doing here in the near future, because a lot of people will just sign up for $10 to get the pay-per-view and then just kind of forget. Right?
Yeah.
The Planet Fitness model of you're going to come here for 2 months and then you're going to stop, but you're going to forget to cancel it, and we're going to take $10 from you every month for the rest of your life.
Yeah, until you start paying attention to your your subs, your bank account.
Yeah, so it could be that too.
Yeah, I'd pay $10 in a few months just to watch the FTR and Briscoes match from the other night.
Yeah.
Get bored on a Saturday night, there ain't no football on. Fuck it. Here's $10.
Tell me, and then at that point you'll be able to watch all the whole trilogy of matches.
Yeah, true. Well, I think that's it, man. Y'all holler at us. I'm going to be on vacation for 2 weeks, so the next 2 weeks we record, we'll probably be recording remotely via Riverside. I don't know. We may get together one of those and come over to the apartment or something, we can record. We'll figure something out. But more than likely, they'll be remote. Holler at us, Twitter, Instagram, at Alabama Slam Pod. We picked up a handful of followers on Instagram lately, maybe a couple here and there on Twitter. So, yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show. Holler at the Alabama Take, our network of friends on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. And, yeah, man, we'll hopefully look forward to another great week of wrestling. Next week, I think, is a holiday bash. Is that correct with AEW?
Yep, looks like we'll have another Elite Death Triangle. We'll have Hayter and Sheeta, and I'm blanking on something else. But
yeah.
Oh,
I totally forgot. Real quick. I want to touch on Moxley versus Takeshita on Rampage Friday night. Fucking loved it.
Oh, yeah.
It was Takeshita's first match back, I think he did a dark match, but his first TV match after officially signing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Love it.
Takeshita is great, and he's a great Twitter follower right now because he is on his journey immaculating himself to the United States and our culture. And I will say that Takeshita versus trying to live a normal life in America is like the third most interesting thing that's happening in AEW right now, and it's not even on television.
I saw that.
He's going to Costco. He's got to deal with the mechanics for his car. Surely to God, there's a camera crew following him around because this is priceless.
Yeah, that's app content. Once you start, once you finally build an AEW subscription,
they should be doing it now. They should be showing promo. Like if Takeshita had this much hype and he came into WWE in like the early 2000s, Vince McMahon would have had like the fucking APA take Takeshita under their wing, and they would take him to they'd take him to strip clubs, they'd take him to all this shit, and then it would culminate with like them at a bar and like Takeshita drinking him under the table, and then they all get in a bar fight with like a bunch of randos, and Takeshita knocks some random ass dude out, and then the APA is like, "Hey, this Japanese dude's all right." Like it would have been slightly racist too, but it at least would have been a thing, right?
The only thing I've seen, because I don't follow him, but I should now. It sounds like there was a headline or something about him waiting on his bed to arrive, so he was like tweeting about just sleeping on a mattress with no electricity or
yeah,
in his apartment, and like was barely even set up and ready to go.
Yeah, that was the beginning of the story. He's now gone to Costco. He's learned how to operate the air fryer.
Oh shit.
His check engine light came on in his car. So it's like a whole. It's just follow his Twitter. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, I mean,
and it should be on television somehow.
So what you need to do when we get done recording is tweet at Tony Khan from our account and be like, "Listen, here's $1 million idea. Put a camera crew with this man.
Let him follow him.
I mean, not a whole crew. Take one fucking camera and a sound guy.
Yeah.
Let's go."
This can at least be a segment on BTE, right?
Yeah.
At the least.
Yeah.
So
there's money to be made there, Tony Khan.
yeah.
So yeah, y'all holler back at us next week. Should be a fun week of wrestling. Gunther versus Ricochet Friday night, and then the Holiday Bash next weekend. And we'll be just before Christmas. I'm going to be on vacation, living my best life, not looking at a computer or a camera. It's going to be fucking awesome.
Hell yeah.
All right, we'll see y'all next week. Thanks.
Later, guys.